The window holds the night at a careful distance. Inside remains still. Outside continues without urgency. Light from the street arrives softened by glass. Shapes lose their edges. Motion slows as it reaches the surface. Nothing presses forward. Nothing retreats. Presence settles near the window, steady and quiet, allowing the city to exist as distant light and muted movement. Streetlights glow below in a slow pattern. Their reflections stretch upward across the glass. Colors blur slightly, edges dissolve. Inside stays unchanged. Air remains calm. The view does not invite focus. It allows attention to rest without direction. Light appears. Light fades. The window receives everything evenly, holding the city without interruption or response. Across the street, buildings remain mostly quiet. Some windows glow faintly, others remain dark. No order forms. Light appears where it appears. Darkness holds where it holds. The window accepts both without distinction. Distance stays intact. Observation remains neutral. Nothing stands apart. Everything beyond the glass carries the same quiet weight and the same still presence. Night air presses gently against the outside of the glass. Inside warmth remains steady. Sound arrives softened and indistinct. Details dissolve before reaching clarity. The window maintains its role without effort. It neither draws in nor pushes away. It simply holds the view in place, allowing observation to remain calm, distant, and without involvement. Movement below passes slowly. Headlights drift through the frame. Their reflections stretch and fade. Nothing remains long enough to form meaning. Inside stays unchanged. The glass reflects faint interior tones alongside the city lights outside. Both remain separate. Neither overtakes the other. The balance holds quietly without tension or adjustment. Signals change somewhere below. Colors shift. These changes arrive muted and softened by distance. The glass removes sharpness. Only gentle impressions remain. No single movement stands apart. Everything blends into a slow visual flow. The window allows this rhythm to continue without emphasis, holding each change briefly before letting it dissolve. The frame around the glass remains still. It outlines the view without drawing attention. Beyond it, the city rearranges itself slowly. Inside, space remains constant. The contrast feels natural, to states existing side by side, neither responding to the other. The separation holds steady, quiet, and without any need to shift or resolve. Faint reflections from inside appear on the glass. They overlap with the city lights outside. Layers remain soft. No image becomes dominant. The window holds both without distortion. The overlap feels brief and weightless. Interior and exterior meet momentarily on the surface, then separate again without leaving a trace. Movement on the street grows sparse. Gaps between passing lights widen. The city slows without stopping. The window continues to receive what remains. Inside, stillness deepens slightly. No adjustment occurs. The view stays open and unchanged, allowing attention to rest without searching, without anticipation, and without forming conclusions. The glass cools as the night deepens. Light outside becomes heavier and more diffuse. Inside, warmth remains unchanged. The window continues its quiet function, holding distance, holding clarity. Presence near the glass settles further. The city continues beyond the surface, without interruption, without acknowledgement, and without any need to be followed. Rain begins to gather on the glass. Thin lines form and move downward at uneven speeds. Some trails merge, others fade before reaching the frame. The motion remains gentle. Inside stays dry and quiet. The window accepts the rain without change. Each drop arrives briefly, then disappears, leaving the surface ready for the next soft movement. Reflections shift as rain alters the surface of the glass. City lights stretch longer, colors blur further, shapes lose definition. Inside remains steady, no sound grows clearer. The rain reshapes what is seen without adding weight or urgency. The view continues calmly, softened by water and distance, held in a constant state of quiet transformation. Drops collect near the edge of the frame. They pause, then release. The sound is faint and brief. Inside, silence absorbs it fully. The rain does not draw attention. It repeats its pattern without variation. The window continues to separate motion from stillness, allowing both to exist without overlap or disruption. Streetlights glow through the rain. Their reflections bend and scatter across the glass. The movement feels slower now, heavier. Inside, warmth remains unchanged. The rain does not cool the interior. It remains outside. The boundary holds. The window keeps the night present while maintaining distance and quiet clarity. Water traces the surface in overlapping paths. No two lines move the same way. The pattern never completes. It continues without direction. Inside stays still. The rhythm of rain does not suggest progress. It simply repeats. The glass receives each motion evenly, holding the scene in a state of calm repetition. Reflections from passing lights break apart as rain thickens. The city becomes more abstract. Shapes dissolve into color and motion. Inside remains clear and grounded. The contrast deepens without tension. The window allows the outside to soften further, reducing detail while preserving presence. Rain sounds drift in faintly. They lose definition before reaching the interior. What arrives is only awareness. No single drop stands out. The pattern blends into the night. The window continues its quiet task, filtering sound and image until only softened impressions remain. The surface of the glass grows busier with motion. Lines cross and separate. Some vanish quickly, others linger. Inside remains unchanged. The rain does not enter. It stays contained on the far side. The boundary holds steady, allowing movement to exist without crossing into stillness. Light outside grows dimmer as rain thickens. Reflections lose brightness. Colors deepen. Inside, warmth remains constant. No adjustment occurs. The rain reshapes the view slowly, without urgency. The window continues to hold the city at a softened distance, maintaining calm through repetition. Rain settles into a steady rhythm. Drops arrive evenly. The glass accepts them without change. Inside, silence remains intact. The motion outside no longer draws attention. It becomes part of the background. The view continues quietly, shaped by water, distance, and the steady presence of the window. Traffic continues at a distance. Movement arrives mostly as light. Headlights drift along wet streets below. Their paths curve slowly and then fade. No direction becomes clear. Inside remains still. The window holds these distant motions without change. Nothing approaches, nothing recedes. The city continues its slow circulation beyond the glass, steady and unremarked. Occasional light passes beneath the window. It reflects upward and stretches thinly across the glass. The motion feels brief and incomplete. Inside, nothing shifts. The boundary remains intact. Outside activity continues at a reduced pace. The window receives each passing signal evenly, allowing movement to appear and disappear without accumulation or emphasis. Far below, shapes move through intersections. They slope, they stop, they continue again. The rhythm remains muted and distant. Inside, silence absorbs all of it. The window keeps its steady roll. Movement stays external. Stillness stays within. Both remain present without merging, without drawing attention, and without altering the atmosphere. Streetlights hold their glow. Their color remains consistent. Reflections tremble slightly as rain continues. The city appears layered and distant. Inside stays unchanged. The glass softens depth and detail. Everything beyond feels farther away. Motion becomes suggestion rather than event. The view remains calm and evenly paced. A vehicle passes slowly through the frame below. Its lights move from one edge of the view to the other. The reflection lingers briefly on the glass, then it fades. Nothing replaces it. Inside, stillness remains complete. The window allows movement to pass without consequence or interruption. Light patterns repeat without variation. Red shifts to amber. Amber fades to white. The cycle continues quietly. The city does not hurry. Inside remains steady. The window holds the pattern without judgment. Each change arrives gently and leaves just as easily, leaving no trace behind on the surface of the night. Sound from the street arrives faintly. It loses shape before reaching clarity. What remains is only presence. Inside, silence absorbs it fully. The window filters distance and motion. Nothing sharp enters. The city continues beyond the glass, reduced to softened movement and low awareness. Movement grows less frequent. Gaps between passing lights widen. The street feels more open. Inside, no adjustment occurs. The window remains unchanged. Observation settles further. The city continues at a slower pace, its activity thinning into long intervals of quiet motion and dim illumination. Reflections on the glass become fainter as the night deepens. Colors lose intensity. Shapes blur further. Inside, warmth remains constant. The window continues to hold the view at a distance. Movement persists without urgency. Nothing gathers. Nothing resolves. The scene remains open and unfolding. The city below continues its subtle motion. Lights appear and disappear without pattern. Inside stays still. The window keeps the same separation. Distance remains intact. Observation continues without focus. The night holds steady, allowing movement to exist quietly beyond the glass, without drawing attention or forming conclusion. Rain continues without change. The sound remains even and distant. Individual drops no longer stand out. They blend into a single texture against the glass. Inside, silence remains intact. The boundary continues to filter everything gently, allowing only softened presence to remain. The repetition settles naturally, without drawing focus or suggesting progression. Reflections on the window dim slightly as the night deepens. Colors lose intensity. Edges soften further. Inside, warmth remains stable. No adjustment occurs. The window holds the same balance, allowing exterior movement to become less distinct, while preserving a steady sense of distance and calm presence. The street below appears quieter now. Long pauses stretch between passing lights. Nothing announces itself. Inside, stillness deepens naturally. No response is required. The window continues to separate space and motion, maintaining a steady distance that feels constant, unpressured, and unchanged. Rain traces thinner lines across the glass. Some paths fade quickly, others linger briefly before disappearing. Inside remains unchanged. The repetition becomes familiar. The motion outside no longer draws attention. It exists quietly, continuing without variation, interruption, or emphasis. Light outside grows sparse. Darkness fills more of the view. Inside, warmth holds steady. The contrast remains gentle. The window keeps the same role, holding clarity and distance at once. Nothing suggests transition. Nothing signals completion. The night continues beyond the surface. Sound from the street reduces further. What arrives is faint and indistinct. Inside, silence absorbs it fully. The boundary remains firm but gentle. The window allows the city to remain present without entering, keeping motion outside and stillness within. Reflections settle into darker tones. Color becomes suggestion rather than detail. Inside remains calm. The window continues to receive what little remains of the night's movement. Observation rests without effort, without expectation, and without forming meaning. The rhythm of rain remains steady. Drops arrive evenly. The glass accepts them without change. Inside stays quiet. The repetition feels complete in itself. No variation is required. The scene holds together through consistency rather than motion. The city continues in the distance. Lights appear occasionally, then fade. Inside remains unchanged. The window preserves the same separation. The night does not move toward anything. It simply exists, steady and uninterrupted. Nothing draws closer. Nothing moves away. The balance between inside and outside remains intact. The window holds the view without emphasis. Light and darkness continue their quiet exchange beyond the glass, unchanged and unremarked. The city offers fewer signals now. Light appears less often. Space between movement grows longer. Inside remains unchanged. The window does not react. It holds the view steadily, allowing the night to thin without comment. What remains feels lighter and quieter, as if activity is slowly dissolving into distance. Rain softens further. The sound becomes nearly even. Individual drops no longer stand apart. They blend into a single texture against the glass. Inside, silence remains intact. The boundary filters everything gently, allowing only softened presence to remain, steady and without urgency. Reflections dim along the surface of the window. Colors lose definition. Edges dissolve into darker tones. Inside warmth remains stable. The window holds the same quiet balance. Exterior movement becomes less distinct and less frequent, allowing attention to rest without effort. The street below appears calmer. Long pauses settle between passing lights. Nothing announces itself. Inside, stillness deepens naturally. No change is required. The window continues to separate space and motion, maintaining a steady distance that feels constant and Rain traces faint paths across the glass. Some lines vanish quickly. Others linger briefly before fading. Inside remains unchanged. The repetition grows familiar. Motion outside no longer draws focus. It continues quietly, without variation, without interruption, and without demand. Light outside grows sparse. Darkness fills more of the view. Inside, warmth holds steady. The contrast remains gentle. The window keeps the same role, holding clarity and distance together. Nothing suggests transition. Nothing signals conclusion. The night continues evenly. Sound from the street reduces further. What arrives is faint and indistinct. Inside, silence absorbs it fully. The boundary remains firm, yet gentle. The window allows the city to remain present without entering, keeping motion outside and stillness within. Reflections settle into deeper tones. Color becomes suggestion rather than detail. Inside remains calm. The window continues to receive what little remains of the night's movement. Observation rests without effort, without expectation, and without forming meaning. The rhythm of rain remains steady. Drops arrive evenly. The glass accepts them without change. Inside stays quiet. The repetition feels complete in itself. No variation is required. The scene holds together through consistency rather than motion. The city continues in the distance. Lights appear occasionally, then fade. Inside remains unchanged. The window preserves the same separation. The night does not move toward anything. It simply exists, steady and uninterrupted, without drawing attention. Rain continues softly against the glass. The sound remains even and distant. Inside, silence holds steady. The window maintains its quiet role, allowing the city to remain present without entering. Motion outside feels minimal now, reduced to faint signals that arrive gently and leave without trace. Light outside appears less frequently. Long stretches of darkness settle between reflections. Inside, warmth remains unchanged. The boundary holds firm. The window keeps distance and clarity together, allowing the night to exist without pressure, without direction, and without any need to shift or resolve. Reflections grow faint along the glass. Color softens further. Shapes lose definition. Inside remains calm and stable. The window continues to receive what remains of the night's movement. Observation rests naturally, without effort, without focus, and without forming conclusions. Sound from the street becomes rare. What arrives is barely defined. Inside, silence absorbs it fully. The separation between spaces remains intact. The window holds its position, allowing stillness to deepen while movement outside continues quietly at a distance. Rain maintains its gentle rhythm. Drops arrive evenly. The glass accepts them without change. Inside stays quiet. The repetition feels complete. No variation is required. The scene remains stable, held together by consistency rather than motion or change. The city remains beyond the glass. Light appears occasionally, then fades. Inside remains unchanged. The window preserves the same calm separation. Nothing moves closer. Nothing moves away. The balance between spaces holds steady and The window remains, the night remains. Rain continues softly. Light arrives and fades. Inside stays still. No moment stands apart. The atmosphere settles into quiet continuation, steady and unchanged, allowing everything to remain exactly as it is.